So are there any questions from your discussions? Any questions? The good feeling is triggered. The potential for the good feeling is already in your mind from having done a virtuous action in the past. And this is the way I'm putting this desire realm we're in, because attachment's function is to trigger good feelings. So attachment objects trigger a certain response in the body. And because we have some virtuous influence in there, the result of virtuous, then a pleasant feeling arises. But it's a complete misconception to think that cake causes it. It triggers it. In other words, it has to be there. In other words, you couldn't, we can prove that cake is the main cause of good feelings. Because if you're sick, you don't experience a good feeling. Well, that proves that cake is not the cause of a good feeling. But there is you see, it proves it. Otherwise, it would bring a good feeling, whether you like. You see, we believe utterly in the West that the external, samsaric view is that the external objects are the cause of feeling. So when you're mean to me, I believe 1,000,000,000% that my feeling of hurt is directly from your mean words. But it's just literally not true. It doesn't mean there's not a connection. It doesn't mean that you didn't trigger because we all want to be happy. But it's just when you look at the intricacy of it, exactly what the main cause is. This is the essence of the karmic view. Either way. No, because when you sit down to meditate and you access your subtler mind, you will access bliss. You don't need sense object. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. We're junkies. We're junkies. It's the whole point the Buddha's making, dear. We don't need to get a cake to feel good. That's the point. That's the point. That's the point. We're junkies. So we believe we have nothing now, we're empty, hopeless, pathetic. And I'm so full of attachment and all these lies, and I'm needy and desperate because I'm in this body that is created by desire. It's set up for this lying situation to occur. So that I look for beautiful people and gorgeous cakes and lovely things to indeed, which it does do, trigger a good feeling. I don't know I've got a store of good feelings in there that I can access in other ways. By being virtuous, I activate good feelings. By getting rid of attachment, I activate good feelings. This is the essential point that Buddha's making. Oh, well, you've just heard it you've just heard it for the first time. That's all. It takes time to hear it. Well, you've just heard it. That's all. You're so shocked.
And I guess I was sort of thinking, well, it's like,
you keep saying this. No, you keep saying this. So what's the point that you're not getting? Because you keep repeating the same thing. Which point aren't you getting? Huh? No, it's okay. It's not complicated. It's just that we make it complicated because this has been our addiction for eons. And because we have a body that is literally created by attachment. How come we have 5 senses? What do you think a sense needs? It's an object, isn't it? So we've set ourselves up for this scenario. So then? So, okay, say the question more precisely. No, don't state that. State a question. State a question. Don't make a statement. State a question. What's your question? That'll get to it. That's what I'm saying. You don't need to have an object of the senses to trigger good feelings. I repeat, we don't need to have an object of the senses to trigger a good feeling. That's the point. And that's what Buddha's trying to get us to see. All this virtuous seeds are in there. We have the potential for total, complete bliss permanently. And the way to access it is to get rid of attachment. The way to access it is to get rid of attachment, not to follow attachment. That's what we're saying. That's the point. That's where you pick up from. It doesn't mean that we're not mechanically set up such that when you do eat the cake, it will trigger pleasure. It will. It will trigger pleasure. But we don't need to have attachment for it. So basically, the only way now we know to trigger that sort of source of that pool of pleasure is to get a sense object. And that's attachment running the show now. Because it believes the only way I can access it. We don't know how else. So, we have to give up attachment. So while we're giving up attachment in this human body, and this is where the esoteric teachings of Tantra come in, the most sophisticated of Lord Buddha's methods of how to get enlightened. Because we are in a physical body, which is a body of the senses, which has been created by delusions, by karma and attachment. These marvelously sophisticated techniques enable us to utilize the pleasure activated by a sense object when we have given up attachment. And it's a way of quickly getting the mind to get some realizations. It's, quite, as long as Yeshe says, Tantra is quite technical. The point is, we have a little pool of, if we do have a pool of virtuous seeds, which when activated will trigger, will manifest as pleasure. That's their function. The only way now we know how to trigger a good feeling is by contacting a sense object, and which is not strictly speaking the function of attachment. Attachment is something else, but that's the only way we know how. And then we're massively attached to that, addicted to it, and then believe that's why we get pleasure. But the way to access pleasure using Buddhist psychology is to give up attachment, to in fact give up the senses as well, practice morality, calm the senses, don't feed the senses, don't buy into their stories, into the story of attachment, practice morality, take vows, go to the mountains, get single point of concentration, access subtle levels of their mind, which because they're unencumbered by the gross body and the gross conceptions, including attachment, is necessarily blissful, and there be able to deconstruct and remove from the mind all the lies. And so in this way we access this potential for bliss permanently. We can, when you've removed the delusions from the mind, it's impossible to have anything but bliss. It's impossible to have anything but happiness, because we've cut the causes of suffering, which is unpleasant feeling. Understand people? Yeah. That's right. Sorry, the mantra? What? Sorry, darling.
The mantra of the perfection
Oh, that's just one particular mantra from the Heart. That's one mantra from the Heart Sutra. That's all. But that's not the point here. But go on. But that's not the issue. That's not the discussion here at all. That's not the point. The discussion I'm having here doesn't bring in mantras. It's just one of the many methods. That's all. But the point is using single point of concentration, controlling the senses, giving up following the delusions, controlling the senses, practicing morality, taking vows, going into the mountains, getting single point of concentration, accessing a subtle level of mind, going beyond the grosser level, which is where the conceptuality is, accessing a subtle level, which anyway is blissful, and then doing all the work of removing from the mind the misconceptions all the way to the root delusion, thus seeing emptiness, and then perfecting that insight into emptiness, all of which is the development of wisdom. That is the source of bliss. That is the method to get happiness. That's the method to get blissful feelings all the time. That's the answer to the question. Right now, there are methods called Tantra, very sophisticated technology, given that we are in this body, which is an object, which is a body made of desire, that does experience pleasure by contacting sensory objects. So the great tantric yogis are able to utilize that bliss, which has a particular function when combined with concentration, to get the mind to a very subtle level very, very quickly. Then they can get realizations very, very quickly. As Llama says, it's highly technical. Are we communicating here? It's very technical. You've got to understand it. Yeah. You'd be blissful, but not like you'd always have a happy mind. A neutral state of mind? No, you wouldn't have a neutral state of mind. Probably not. You wouldn't have a negative state of mind. You'd have a happy state of mind. You'd always be, and it'd be virtuous, happy and virtuous. No other possibility. If you're in maybe a state of absorption, in concentration, you might be neutral, I think. I'm not so sure. You'd probably be neutral then. But if you're bopping around being a bodhisattva in daily life, and you've got to certain levels of realization of wisdom and gone beyond ego and all this, you couldn't possibly have suffering in the meaning of, not like crying when someone dies. Dalai Lama cried when his mother died, but you wouldn't call that suffering. Suffering is a result of delusions. And if he's said to be a Buddha, which as we know they say he is, he couldn't possibly have any suffering. It's impossible. It's literally impossible. So therefore he'd only have a happy mind, a blissful mind, a clear mind, a virtuous mind. This is the whole point of what he's saying, which is so out of sync with the way we talk in the West about the mind. It's like, it's bizarre almost. You know? That's right. 99% of us Buddhists in the world, 99% of people who are Buddhists won't be doing that one this life anyway.
I find that get withdrawn from I don't know how we teach here close to each other, and I find that when I go back, I feel so withdrawn from. I feel happy going back, but then I see that
That's right. Sure, that's right.
And these are come back in.
I know, that's a good sign. But you've got to be careful. If you have chosen to have the life, put it this way, if you have chosen to have the householder's life, that is your conscious choice. If you have made that choice, then you need to find a way to interpret it properly. That's where emptiness comes in so importantly, that you can have it. You can be, the bodhisattva style is to be of the world, but not of the world. And that just takes time to develop. And this is very much what comes with developing also bodhicitta. Developing, knowing why you're doing this. So then, you know, it makes it a lot easier. There's a reason to do it. This is, we'll go into the bodhisattva part. We haven't talked about that much yet. Do you understand? So are we clear? Sweetheart, what's your name? Wendy. Are we clear, Wendy? Communicating. Yeah. Yeah. we'll discuss teacher. Why don't we do that now? Let's do that now. Yeah, I mean, if we look at, when you read all the teachings, as you know, if you've been to these retreats, you've been to these monasteries, you're going to hear all the typical teachings and all the traditions in Tibet. They're all going to say, because Tibetan is Mahayana, and because all the Tibetan great practitioners are all from Tantra, so therefore there's this enormous teaching on the necessity for the Guru, the absolute necessity. In fact, all the Lamas will say that the central, the main thing is the teacher. The relationship to the teacher is the ground in which our Dharma grows. So it's really hard to, when we read it, in my opinion, we read it in a very traditional way. It just sounds very forbidding, very difficult, and really hard to see, for me, to see the logic that the Guru is the foundation of all qualities. I mean, maybe spontaneous for some people to see this, but it's very, for me, it's hard to hear initially the logic of it. And for me, my mind, I like to unpack it and try to see the logic of why that is. And have some confidence in it. Because when you read the teachings about Guru devotion and you hear very devoted disciples, the great yogis talking, it's exactly the same as faith in God, the way they talk. Completely the same. In what you can say that. So we've really got to understand what it means. Yeah. Because I think we can get into so much danger by misunderstanding the teachings. It becomes so fundamentalist and so deep, just really inappropriate. So okay, let's just talk really simply about it. I find that helpful for my myself. Well, first of all, it seems to be completely logical that to learn anything properly, the obvious, the evident way to do that is to find someone who knows how to do it. It's obviously the easiest, I mean, to try and reinvent the wheel is just plain stupidity, it's just arrogance. And I know myself, when I first started moving towards a spiritual path, I mean, I'd been a Catholic, gave it up, as an old hippie and sort of radical politics, and was really moving in my own self. If I look back into it, really becoming my own person, and then having, at some point, really seriously thinking, I've got to do it myself. I must do it. So when I heard about this thing of gurus, I thought, even before I became spiritual again, I thought it was just revolting. I thought, I have to do it. What do I teach it for? I have to do it. And it's true. We have to do it, and it's a good point to get to. And I really was convinced that I had to do it. What do you mean teach? It's absurd. I didn't understand it. And then I remember, anyway, whatever. But it seems, if we think about it, it is we who have to do it. And this is where the mistake can be. If we have the view, which can be the mistaken view of devotion in somebody, it's like attachment, in other words. When it's all attachment, they're so perfect, I'm just nothing. Then it's useless. Then it's a disaster. So we've got to have that confidence that I've got to do it. And then we'll understand the role of the teacher, which is to show me how to become it. Not just do it for me, which can be easy to misplace devotion in the Guru or God. They're perfect, they're the boss, and I'm nothing. That's completely wrong. I have to do it. So you've got to have incredible confidence if you're going to try and become like the Buddha. My God, that's enormous. You've got to have real confidence that you can do it, and that your reason for having the teacher is to show you how to do it. And this is the point. That's why we want a teacher, because we want to know how to become our Buddha. So obviously, the quickest way is to find someone who is, accomplished in that. It's reasonable. And I always remember, I was used as an example, when I first learned how to make a cake. I was 26, not 6. I'd never wanted to do things like this. And I'd been in London, and I was an old hippie, and the first time, and this is the first point, the first step that we have to take in learning anything is the wish to learn it. This is really clear. This is why it's so clear in Buddhism that you don't try and force people. You don't try and convert. It's like bringing a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, And it so obviously doesn't work, forcing someone to go to Mass, and forcing someone to learn this, and forcing a person to like football. We know it's impossible. We know ourselves as children trying to force to do things. We didn't do it until we decided ourselves. It was when I was 14 that I decided to start studying. Then I finally started to pass exams. Until then, I went to school, but I didn't learn. So when I decided at 26 I wanted to make a cake. I remember the moment it arose in my mind. I was in London, I was a hippie, and I had a thought to make a carrot cake. Like hippie, you know. And it was so clear. It was the first time the thought I want to make a cake. And then I was going to go home to Melbourne anyway, and I thought, oh, I'll ask Mum. Now, believe me, it wasn't because I was trying to be kind to my mum, because I wasn't kind to my mum. The reason was because she was a good cake maker. And I knew that because I'd tasted her cake. So I'd done part of my research. One of the things they say before you find a teacher, first you've got to want to learn that thing. And indeed, when it comes to a spiritual teacher, you've got to know what it is you want to learn. So if you just vaguely looking for a spiritual path, let's say, you know, you can go to find a Christian teacher. Well, if that's the goal you want, if you want to go to heaven with God when you die, that's the kind of teacher you find. If you want to become an enlightened being, Mahayana, that's the kind of teacher you want. If you want to achieve nirvana, that's the teacher you find. You've got to know what it is you want first, don't you? You've got to know the goal first. So if you're clear, just say you, impersonal, but general, the Tibetan Buddhist one sort of feels right, you understand, then you've got, at least you've narrowed your options. So I knew I had to make a cake, and I knew my mum knew how to make cakes. And I'd done my research already, and that's one of the key things. You don't just believe, you know, I could have thought, oh, I might ask Joe to show me how to make a cake. Now this is the point. I have no idea. If I've never known Joe before. I don't know if Joe can make cakes, but I think Joe's cute. And they say, yeah, I'll show you how to make a cake. They might be a disaster and lead me up a garden path. So I've got to have confidence, intellectual confidence, that that person's valid. That's the first thing. I've got to have that confidence. I've got to want what they've got, and I've got to be confident. Now, it's easy for cakes, obviously, but the principle's the same. I knew I wanted to make a cake, and I knew I'd tasted my mum's cakes. I'd done research. They say check the students of the teacher. I'd tasted my sister's cakes. So you say you check their reputation. I checked my mother's peers said she was a good cake maker. That's exactly what you do with a teacher. So then, when I happened to go to Melbourne, I was ready. I knew that she was a valid cake maker. I had confidence intellectually. I tasted her cakes, I tasted her disciples' cakes, her peers said she was good, and, you know, I connected with her. So I said, Mum, please tell me how to make a cake. Now, the point is this, if I hadn't done that research, like I said with Joe, and I said, please, Mum, show me how to make a cake, but she didn't have a clue, I would not know. I'd have no basis. I mean, I'd have no basis anyway when she said put 2 eggs in. I didn't know intellectually or experientially if that was right. But because I trusted her, I had faith, confidence. Look at the word faith, confide, with trust, but based on wisdom, based on my research. I trusted that my mother wouldn't mislead me. And you have to have that trust. And that can only come from research, can only come from listening, from checking, from looking, from analysing, watching the students, reading, looking at their reputation. You've got to really do that, really, really strongly. That's the only way we can be confident, isn't it? How else? Because you haven't got the experiential confidence. This is completely crucial. This is vital. So then when my mother told me what to do, I shut my mouth and I did it. But if I then start saying, well, who do you think you are telling me what to do? What do you mean 2? Why not 5? Then I'm in trouble. Shut up and do what she said. And I made a cake. In fact, it was an apple and walnut cake. It wasn't a carrot cake. And I really haven't made a cake in more than 20 years. But I bet I can make a good one. She was the right teacher. My mind was ready. I listened. I did it. And the result came. You know. This is really the process you need to check. One for a teacher. And then, of course, gets very tricky, very difficult. And this is where the teachings are quite difficult, I think. Because, you know, we know, especially we know in all the teachings, they talk about how once you're committed to a Llama, a teacher. Llama, guru, these words are synonymous. One is Sanskrit, one is Tibetan. You know? And I don't know, there's no real equivalent in English, is there? So I prefer to continue using those 2 words. You know? But it just means spiritual teacher. The person, and that means not a person who's graduated from something as a guru. There's no concept like that. It's a person who is qualified, whom you have checked on. And then ideal, of course, is the best teacher. The best one is, of course, the Buddha, a person who is a Buddha. Now, obviously, this is where it gets tricky. It is impossible to know who is a Buddha if you're a regular person. It is literally impossible. We all say, oh, the Dalai Lama is a Buddha. Oh, excuse me, how do we know? How arrogant we are. We say it like we really do know it. It's such delusion, you know. If you're clairvoyant and you're a Buddha, you also know the Dalai Lama is Buddha. In fact, you'd be quiet if you're a Buddha because you're admitting you're a Buddha as well. It's really, we are so ignorant. We talk like this. We can be comfortable to say that because everybody else said he's a Buddha and all the Lamas say he's a Buddha. We'll say that they say he's a Buddha and good enough for me. I can't say the Dalai Lama. I mean, to say the Dalai Lama is a Buddha, definitely yeah, I believe it's a Buddha, is complete romantic nonsense. But to have confidence in your own mind that he's a Buddha, you must have. That mind your own business and be quiet. You've got to have confidence in the Buddha. Now this is where it gets tricky. This is where it gets tricky, especially in Tantra, the highest teaching. Everything is geared to this. All the practices of the visualizations we're doing, like Vajrasattva, we're taking initiations. The essence of the they say all the blessings, all the realizations come from our relationship with, from our conviction, our faith, our confidence that Vajrasattva, in this case, is the Buddha, is my Guru, and my Guru is Vajrasattva. When you think Guru, you think Buddha. When you think Buddha, you think Guru, inseparably. And the more we're capable of this, they say that quickly we'll get realizations. This is the key to it. And this seems intellectually quite hard to hear, it seems to me. Maybe somebody's got a lot of faith in the path and they accept that. That's because you've got a lot of merit. But to understand it logically, I don't know, I just find it helpful to think about that and to talk about it, you know. Why is that logical? Well, first of all, if I'd checked up on, okay, in my case, Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa are my root gurus. You've got root guru, that's the term they use, as we know in Tibetan Buddhism. Root guru. Your mummy Lama, your main one. The one who's touched your heart most. You can have many Lamas, many Lamas. But you have your heart Lama. So, in my case, it's two. Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa, in my case. So the first Lama was Lama Yeshe. First time I connected, it took a while longer to connect with Lama Zopa. So I remember just intuitively doing those steps. I went to the teachings for the first time at Chenrezig Institute, went to the Lam Rim, didn't understand Lama Zopa, didn't have a clue what he was saying. 1 month of Lam Rim, I was lost. I did not understand what he said. Not because I could understand his words, I didn't understand the arcane concepts. I was drowning in confusion. I didn't know where Buddhism was. I could not understand what he was on about, But I knew I liked it. I felt familiar with it. So then Lama Yeshe would come along and give the evening talks. Then I understood. I got him. Somehow he connected from my heart, Everything he said made sense. He spoke kind of a very psychological way. Somehow I connected with him. So I did all the things that they said. I didn't know what you're supposed to do, but I checked. I liked the look of the students. I liked what he said. I could see Lama Zopa, who was Lama Yeshe's disciple. Lama Zopa was his perfect disciple. I could tell Lama Zopa was a really holy being, even though I couldn't get him. So if he was the student of Lama Yeshe must be cool, So you did all the things that they say. And so after 2 months there, I did a 1 month Lam Rim and a 1 month meditation retreat with Lama. And then I took refuge. I didn't recognize yet Lama as my Lama, but I liked Lama. I felt close to Lama. And then I went back home to practice every day. I did my practice, living in Melbourne. And then halfway through that year, something in my mind shifted and I decided Lama Yeshe was my Lama. It just took time to process. And then I remember feeling completely embarrassed because, it was 1976, I think. And I didn't know anybody with a Lama. It sounded like a ridiculous idea. And I thought a guru was a weird thing to have. I remember whispering to my sister Polly, got a guru, Polly, but don't tell anybody. So then I went back to Chenrezig the following year, 1 year later from the previous course. And I didn't know you're supposed to request. I informed Lama, he was my Lama, I told him he was my teacher. But I was so proud I couldn't even say that word, He said, I know, dear. Anyway, whatever. But the thing was, then the hard work started. Because, of course, full of neediness, full of attachment, I've got a Lama, wow, far out, whatever it meant, God knows. But, having some confidence in the teachings, liking the teachings very much, really thinking about them clearly, really analysing, really realising this is my path, all that stuff. But then the hard work started because inevitably this little needy little girl in there wants to be loved, wants to be approved of, wants to be stroked. And then I went to Copan and became a nun. And then it just somehow all the way over the years for me, the Lamas have helped my mind, worked with my mind. Everyone's very different. What I saw nakedly was that they don't give you what you want, what your attachment wants. They were very firm. Lama Yeshe was very firm, very strong, very wrathful. But somehow, because of my confidence in him, I got the point. I was able, because what their job is, basically what the job of a Llama is not to give you necessary verbal teachings. That's absolutely part of it. But it's somehow just show your mind. You know? That's their job. That's their expertise, is the mind. And that means to show you your delusion, to give you instructions, but to get you to see your own mind, to get you to see your own mind. And I can say without any doubt, left to my own resources, without a Llama, I would never have seen my mind. Quite definitely I can say that. In my case, for example, I had all this energy to do things. I didn't want to particularly study. I didn't want to particularly meditate. I wanted to just do things. So in my case, I became a nun. I wanted that. I wanted to become a nun. That was clear to me. All my life I wanted to be a nun, so I became a nun. That was fine. Get on with it, take the vows and get on with it. And I wanted to work, and so my expertise was editing. So I just wanted to keep on doing all the editing work. I wanted to get to do things. And somehow my main practice for me, because I've got all this energy to do things, I just assumed I'd be the boss for this particular, the work. I just assumed it. I wasn't being arrogant. Well, I suppose I was, but I wasn't being arrogant. I just had this confidence. I assumed I'd be the boss. And then Llama says, oh, fantastic, Robina, be secretary. Oh, I nearly fainted. So this is the way my teachings came. It was so vivid, so direct, so shocking. I could not believe. I'd want to blow my brain. I'd think to myself, I said to myself one time, because I had expertise. And the person he chose as a director knew nothing about publishing. I like this hippie. And I'll never forget, I was so shocked. And so that was the way I learned from the Lamas. And I would never have learned that without a teacher. I would have just raged on and run it and done what I did, because I was good at it. But I had to be stopped in my tracks to see my mind. Do you understand me? That is not possible without a person who knows where you're coming from. If you just sit there and play music because you've really got a feeling for music, but you never have a teacher telling you what you're doing, you really will just get caught up. You've got some feeling for it, but you've got no one policing you, no one guiding you, no one holding you, checking you, telling you what. You have to have that. Some people, it wasn't like Llama said, don't do this or do this. He wasn't really having a long leash on you. It was just that alone was the most powerful teaching. That all the way in my relationship with the Llamas has been like that. Do you understand what I'm saying, people? It was my experience, There was no way. First of all, there was no way, if I didn't have quote-unquote devotion in Llama, meaning having faith in him, having confidence, having checked, having committed, knowing I had a serious commitment to this person. If I didn't have that, and he was, say, my boss and said, be secretary, I would have said, goodbye, I'm leaving. Thanks a lot, mate. Who do you think you are? I know what I can do. Do you understand? I would not have hung around. But only because of who he was, and because I had confidence that he knew, that even though I was raging against this, I knew he knew what he was doing. I knew there was a learning in there, even though I went crazy. Do you understand? You absolutely have to have that. And the thing is, we can see in the West, we have that easily, and it can be so mixed with attachment. And I've seen the dangers over the years of people in the West committing to Lamas and then giving them up later because they think they're sex abusers, or that they sue their Lamas and all the drama. I mean, you just have to go onto Google and go onto the internet. You're going to find so many stories of so many Lamas, and it's like a minefield of drama, And if you don't have certainty, but as soon as you hear somebody else criticise them, oh, all right, it's no good, he's not a Lama after all, I'll go somewhere else. It's like attachment, it's like boyfriends. So you've got to have some confidence. Okay, I remember, you've got to have confidence. At this time, this is a long time ago, 30 years ago, there was some drama about one of the centres of Lama. It doesn't matter, one Lama whom they'd invited took the centre. It was a long time ago, it doesn't matter the details. Two things about the story. And so then Llama was getting a lot of criticism from the world, from other people. Since then, it's the other Llama who's now being criticised. And it's all politics, I'm so sorry, it's very boring, but it's just sentient beings, what can we do? Us sentient beings have the karma to have delusions. But this particular centre in England years ago, the Llama, the Lamas over Llama Yeshe invited to be the resident teacher. He was, a qualified Geshe. He eventually took the centre with his students, and then now he started that new organisation. The one called the New Kadama Tradition. You heard of that? Doesn't matter if you haven't. But and this is tragic, because it's just negative karma now. That he's gone against His Holiness, they demonstrate against His Holiness. It's just heartbreaking. But the point I'm getting at is this. The point I'm getting at is this, two things. I committed to Llama Yeshe and Llama Dev. This is Llama Yeshe Center. I worked there for Llama Yeshe doing wisdom publications, my job with this boss. Trying to be a good person. Anyway, whatever. Anyway, at some point, all this terrible schism occurred. Just some old past negative karma, right? And this awful schism occurred at this center. And the Lama who was there, first of all, people criticised Llama Yeshe. Llama Yeshe was the baddie at the time. So if I had been uncertain of Llama Yeshe, and then there's people criticising my Lama, and if I hadn't been certain that he was valid, I would have said, oh, well, I better leave. Lama's been criticised. Do you see what I'm saying? I had to have certainty and confidence in Llama Yeshe, no matter what people said. And then later, anyway, he was vindicated. And now the Lama, this Lama, Geshe Kosam Gyatso, he's also one of my Lamas because I took initiation from him. I took initiation from him, which means when you've taken, strictly speaking, the real strict reading of Guru devotion is if you've taken even refuge, 8 Mahayana precepts, lay vows, Bodhisattva vows, tantric vows, with that one, that's one of your Lamas. Really strict reading. Strict. So I take initiation, which is the highest one. So there's no question then I needed to see him as my Lama. So there he is, going against Llama Yeshe, going against His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So it's like enough to split your brain in half. How can I have faith in a person who criticises Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa and Dalai Lama? And how can I have faith in Lama? In other words, so this is where the real, again, clear understanding of the serious teachings about Guru devotion are absolutely necessary as groundwork. So fortunately, because I had to edit books and I had to study the teachings properly to edit books, I'd heard the teachings, And so for me, since that time, I've never had one bad thought about Geshe Kosam Gyatso. He is one of my Lamas. So the way to think here, this is where it gets tricky. Because we say, oh, the Dalai Lama's the Buddha. Because he makes us feel good. Excuse me. He makes us feel good. And lots of everybody else. So we're all sort of, when everybody's agreeing, it's easy to be in the big crowd where everyone says he's good. But if suddenly everyone turns against the Dalai Lama, you're going to have a lot of courage to hold, to back the Dalai Lama, because we all want to be approved of, so we all want to be in the right group, It's easy to like the Dalai Lama because he starts on time, finishes on time, he makes you laugh, he cracks jokes, everyone adores him. Well, of course, if you're a communist, a Chinese communist, you don't adore him, he makes you crazy. But Lama Zopa Rinpoche, another story, I'm getting several points I'm making here, about how we can't see with our eyes what's true. This is the whole business of delusions, So there's Lama Zopa Rinpoche, said to be a high being. He's one of my Lamas too, my root Lama. But Lama Zopa Rinpoche, if he has his way, will have you there until 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. When normal people like me are exhausted, your body's killing you, and of course your mind's getting very distressed, which means angry. And when you feel angry and distressed, of course the person you blame is the one who seems to be keeping you up. And so the mind is raging. Of course, I don't buy into it because I know he's my Lama and I know he's doing what he has to do and it's not his mistake, it's my mistake. So again, I thank him for showing my shitty mind, But it's really, really, really hard work not to buy into whatever feelings are rising, oh, Lama Zopa must be bad. And the fact is, we should have this view to everybody. This is a really pure way. But as Lama Zopa says, you don't believe in your karmic appearances. So when you come along about to punch me, if I've really got pure view and really try to understand emptiness, I might get the hell out of your way, but I will not judge you. You could be the Buddha coming along to test me. This is not a joke. Tibetans have this really confidence in this. They all have confidence that Mao Tse-tung could be the Buddha. Manifesting to destroy them all, to help them hasten their Buddhahood. That is no big deal. In the Bodhisattva path, this is what we've got to talk about, the Bodhisattva path. You don't get this in the Hinayana path, in the wisdom wing. We've got to hear this in the Bodhisattva path, and we'll talk about these teachings. So there's, me having devotion to Llama Yeshe and Lama Zopa. I do not know whether they are a Buddha or not, but my commitment is to see them as a Buddha. And why? The point is why. Why should I do that? It sounds like weird to us in the West. It sounds like you're deluding yourself. That's why you've got to check first and have confidence. I think, for me, the main logic is this. Lama Yeshe, my Lama, okay? And then when there's Lama Yeshe saying Robina be secretary, and I'm raging and freaking out about this, because I feel I should be running it. Then I see the person who's appointed as director, and I'm freaking out. Lama doesn't understand me. They're struggling to deal with this. So if I have confidence that he is the Buddha, that he's an emanation of the Buddha, that means necessarily everything he says and does is perfect. And that means, because he's my teacher, his job like a wise parent, is to guide me. So it's like tough love. You know, when I've told you, when, you know, Mummy's told me 4 times to stop eating chocolate, and I haven't listened. She has to say, go to your room. I said no more chocolate. Of course, I'm in tears. Mummy doesn't love me. But if Mummy's a good mummy, we all understand this. She's not being unkind to me. She's being wisely kind. She's using tough love. We get this completely. So Llama, having his wisdom, being the Buddha for me, that means he can only be doing whatever he does. That's the key practice. Whatever he does has to be only for my benefit. Therefore, whatever it is has to be right. So then when you have that mind, this is the point now. This is the point now. Who is the beneficiary of that? Me. That's right. Llama doesn't mind. But if I start to find fault, who does that obscure? Me. It just seems, so this is pure view. Pure view is some kind of holy thing. It's really not believing in karmic appearances. It's going beyond the appearance of what it looks like, a regular person with glasses on who's a monk who goes to bed and gets up like an ordinary person. As Lama Zopa says, the Buddha, it's impossible to see a Buddha because Buddha's a word used to refer to the Buddha mind, actually. The real Buddha is the Dharmakaya, which is the term in Sanskrit referring to omniscient mind. Pure, unmanifest, all-seeing, all-knowing, all-compassionate, all-pervasive consciousness. Just like they talk about God. That's impossible to cognize. So out of kindness, that Buddha mind manifests in the Rupakaya, or the form body, a form that we poor dummies can see. And that's the form of the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha. We think he's the Buddha. He's just a manifestation of Buddha. That's all. I don't know about rushes of energy, that makes me nervous. Based on intelligence and wisdom.
Yes. So I'm trying to get my head around it, but to me, it's like you're a conduit.
Who?
From the Buddha. Like the Buddha.
You mean the Llama? It's a way of, whatever you want to say, it's a way of saying it. The way to say, yeah, that's a way to say it. The better way to say it is the Llama is the Buddha. You know how the Christian teachings say Jesus is God? Same thing. Exactly the same meaning. You know, God we can't access. If you've been Christian, the idea you can't access Almighty God. So God manifests in a form looking like you and me called Jesus. It's what? Well, that's exactly the same idea. That's exactly the same. Sorry, coexist what?
The same train of thought.
What train of thought, darling?
That I had with God and Jesus.
No, the way to say it is the person you have decided is your Llama. The person you have decided is your Llama. Not even just, it's best to not even say Buddha's a conduit through them, but they are the Buddha. I'm just telling you what the teaching... Sweetheart, I know, well, I'm telling you what the teaching's saying. So just listen, relax, listen. You're fine. So that's what the teaching, that's the best one. And so that's, you know, when you have... This is like the one of Jesus. You don't think God is working through Jesus. Jesus is God. Same here. Same here. The Llama is the Buddha's mind manifesting as a human from my benefit. Then when I have confidence in that, then whatever my Llama does, then of course I will see it as the action of a Buddha. And it's solely and only for my benefit. It's just a skill, it's all it really is a really skillful technique for me to get the benefit, for me to quickly learn. It's literally, there's no drama, there's no should. When we have all this emotional junk around it, like, and then you have all these things, people talk about the power of a Llama, and they manipulate, use power. It can be when it's an ordinary person with delusions, you know. Oh, true, it can happen this way. But the faith of the student, based upon intelligence, based upon wisdom, based upon checking, and a deeply private thing, we rabbit on about it and rave on and all la-di-da, wow, Faradi must be a Llama. It's so emotional. It's like talking about boyfriends, you know. It's just so disgusting, really. It's really private information, private business, you know. Do you understand? But it's really difficult one to get super clear. Because we're so deluded that we want, you know, as soon as attachment doesn't get what it wants, it's easy to think someone's a Buddha when they're fulfilling your attachment needs. But like your boyfriend, at the moment they stop, you're going to start blaming them and criticizing. This is what happens all the time. It's really, really difficult. So it's not a, you know, it's a really serious relationship to get into. We should know what we're doing, you know. So do you understand, so is this answering your question?
I understand this portion, but I have one more question for my solution. I'm used to be under the impression that all of the teachers were only teachers due to the fact that they have been given oral transmission because they were seen as being able, that they could, they had a level of thing that they could receive these transmissions, would honor the Buddhist path, and deliver the teachings in a purity. Okay? I have since been reading this book that I got out of the library.
Which book is that? By whom? By whom? Who's the author? Alex Berzin. Yeah, okay. What's he saying?
And he says that nowadays there are many teachers that are out in the world that no one is really, that system doesn't exist anymore. There are teachers that His Holiness the Dalai Lama doesn't really think maybe they are appropriate or whatever, but
You're talking about the tulkus. You're talking about the Tibetan system of tulkus, the one of being formally recognized as a Rinpoche. That's what you're talking about, no? That's what you're talking about. But that's just a tiny percentage of people who are, they don't have to be a Rinpoche to be a Lama. That's not the discussion what a Lama is. Lama, okay, let me just, okay.
Okay, so of course when I read this, I had a little bit of concern because my original attraction to this Tibetan path was, great, anybody who's out there teaching has been basically certified.
No, it's not like that at all. There's not even a system. There never has been a system like that. It isn't like that. It isn't like that. What happens, for example, what happens is, if you're in one of the big monasteries, you know, like say one of the big monastic universities, which is the system of the lamas in our tradition, like at our monastery, for example, it's a very interesting system. It's, you know, it's been since the medieval, right? So the system is like this. You go there, you're a boy, you study, and you become a geshe. Geshe. Even before you become a geshe, you're out there doing your debates on the yards, you're learning, you're studying, you're learning, and as you get advanced, and then another little boy comes along, several years behind you, and he's a little boy, he comes to watches the debate yard, watches all the debates, and he looks around, and he sees, I like that one, I like that monk. It's a very interesting system. He will then go and say, please will you teach me? So then that young man, even if he's not a geshe yet, will become his teacher. He hasn't made a big, formal, deep relationship, but there's already something. Because you're only a teacher if someone requests you to teach. Okay, you can graduate as a geshe, graduate as a kenpo in the different systems. You graduate from studying. You might be called a Rinpoche. You might have received a transmission. That's not the logic that shows that you're a Lama. It's very interesting. You only become a Lama when someone asks you to teach them. You could be the highest realized being, but if no one asks you to teach, you're not a Lama. There's no self-existent Lama. It really is, you become a Lama. You can't teach until someone asks you. So a Lama, your Lama, might be the smallest little person that no one else sees as a teacher, but you've got this karmic connection, you request him or her to be your Lama, that's your Lama. It doesn't mean it's anybody else's Lama. It's a very, very personal thing. Now, Dalai Lama, you could say he's the main Lama because everybody's devoted to him, mostly. You know, because he's huge, but he's not technically, he's not kind of like, hasn't passed an exam to be a Lama. But many, many people have great devotion to him. That's what makes him a Lama. So Lama or teacher or guru, that's what that is. You might or might not have transmissions. You might or might not be a Rinpoche. You might or might not be a monk. That's not the issue. You might or might be any of those things. That doesn't make you a Lama. What makes you a Lama, from your side, because you've got knowledge and experiences, but you might be fairly low level, you mightn't be anywhere near like a Buddha, but someone who has great faith in you, then they are your Lama. They see you as the Buddha. Just a second, let her finish. You hold on, it's good. Do you see what I'm saying, darling? Join the club, darling. We are all deluded and we make big mistakes. That's exactly, it can be. That's exactly right. It can be. And equally, it can be that somebody being deluded has faith in a person who is a very high valid Lama, but then they start losing faith because they think they don't like him anymore because they're deluded. So either way, we're really mislead ourselves. We've got to be so cautious and careful in choosing properly. And the point is this, once we've committed, we're in for the long haul. We're in for the long haul. So we really have to have confidence. Really have to like the person, connect with the person, look at their students, listen to about their reputation, listen to their teachings, feel a connection with that person, request that person. Many of the young lamas, many of the young geshis, in the FEMT in our organisation, which this centre is a part of, which is Gilulpa, as you know, there's maybe 150 centres around the world, and maybe 40 of them have young resident teachers. And they could be Western teachers, that could be Tibetan teachers, and some of those ones, mostly the Tibetans, are called geshe. They've graduated from these monastic universities with this degree, and they're very knowledgeable. They've studied very deeply. And then some of them are quite young, 40s, and they've got a couple of students in the monasteries. You always do have a student for some of the younger monks, and you take care of them, And so in the West, like was one of the geshis, speaks English. He refuses to say, I will take you. He refuses to say yes to any Westerner. He says, I will not have any Western students. But it's very interesting. It's obvious that he is their teacher, but he won't say it because it gets too messy. Westerners are so neurotic, so attached. Even one of my friends, she was crying when he said no. He said, and then he said, maybe in the future I will. And then she said, when in the future you accept students, will you accept me? He said yes. So it's sort of like really he's saying yes, but he's being very cautious. He will not let them prostrate because and it's a very good quality. Because then the ones who are devoted, they keep it very quiet. They don't rabbit on about him, and they're really serious students. He demands that, because of this very cautious way he is. Because we're so emotional about it in the West. We're so sentimental, so much attachment. Oh, wow, you're amazing. And then you hear the stories of some of the lamas, are quite controversial, some Western ones, for example, as well as Tibetans. And then this huge furore and this stuff, and people go against, and they have big websites against them, because people don't check enough, People don't check enough. We're so emotional, so sentimental, so much attachment. It's a very serious thing, and there's no hurry. Does that make sense? You going to say something? Yes. Yeah, that's right. But they've got to have qualities. They've got to, and that's the thing. Your Lama you choose has to know what the teachings are. They tend to give you the wrong teachings, you're in big trouble. That's right. That's right. But people can have very charismatic leadership qualities, but not have much knowledge, and that's where the danger comes too. Your point's right. I'm not trying to argue with you, but it is. You've got to have the qualities. They've got to have the Dharma. They've got to not lead you up a garden path. You've got to be confident their Dharma is valid. Deadly serious. What I'm saying is you get a degree as a Geshe, or Kenpo they call it in some of the systems. You might have the label Rinpoche, but this is what I think Berzin is talking about, the sort of degenerate system, and many of them, whatever, doesn't matter. But it's not like you get a degree as a teacher. You don't get a degree as a Lama. And why I like it in the monastery, it's an organic thing. This young Geshe, there he is teaching. There's other monks before him, after him, like the look at him, request him, and then he becomes their philosophy teacher, and then they slowly grow this relationship. And then he takes responsibility and looks after them. Because one of the Lama's job is to take care of the students, So it's very interesting the way they develop it in Tibet. And I think for the West, we've just got to be very cautious. Very careful. But that's when we do develop the relationship, you've got to be really practice what they call pure view, which is because a Buddha is impossible to be seen, they've got to take a form that looks ordinary. Just by definition, a human form is ordinary, which looks like a person goes to sleep, they looks like they wear glasses. We think, well, if they're a Buddha, how can they wear glasses? They're going to act like an ordinary person, you know. So you've got to have really confidence that they are doing whatever they do. This is the essential teaching. That whatever they say, whatever you hear about them, whatever you see them do, it's a teaching for your mind. This is that is the quickest way to enlightenment. And frankly, if you had that view to everybody, you'd get enlightened very quickly. That's the point. That's the point. If you have, you know, if you, in Tantra, for example, when you take initiation into one of the practices, you have a commitment, first of all, to see yourself as the deity, to see others as the deity, to see all sound as mantra. It's a whole different discussion in Tantra, which we'll go into, where you're lifting your game and you're learning to see things as transcendental. That's the purest of pure view. The way we are now in this ordinary mundane world, you see shitty people there and ugly ones there and nice ones there and this and that. And our delusions are always pointing, oh, there's an ugly person, there's a good one, there's a this. It's really dualistic, deluded view. But if you're beginning to develop pure view, forget even Tantra, you know, even the most pure is to think. When you hear about an angry person, well, first of all, the simplest teaching is, well, thank you for showing me anger, thank you for the teaching, rather than dumping it on them. Or even thinking, well, that could be, you know, in Tantra, that's a wrathful deity showing me how to be. It's a hard teaching. It's not stupid. It's not kind of naive. It's actually quite profound. It's based on emptiness, based on karma, based on those two. When you never believe what you're seeing, but you see it all as everything is a teaching for you, you'll develop very quickly, very, very quickly. Because as soon as I find fault and then believe in what I'm saying, that's continuing samsara. That itself. So it's this pure view that causes it to be quick. Because every time my Llama says do this and I have a resistance and I do it, it's the Buddha, I just smash through delusions. I probably purified so many lifetimes of ego and arrogance by just by attempting to be secretary, even though I'm a terrible job at it, you know. I kept trying to be the boss. My poor boss, can you imagine? Someone else has on the John? 4:30. What, Tony? I said, you can just look in the internet and you're going to find so many dramas and stories about people going against their gurus, is what I said.
Is that because Westerners are looking to find faults and looking for a reason?
No, darling, it's just because we have deluded minds. No, we have deluded minds like everybody else. It's called delusion, it's called attachment. Because we're deluded and needy and neurotic and angry and want to find fault. And this is mind, it's samsaric mind. And we're very good at it in the modern technological world, aren't we? So we're communicating about this, people? Any questions? Yes, attachment, good. Yeah. Right, of course. Attachment meaning need to be around them and afraid not to have them. Okay. That's right, how we are. That's how we are. Good. I understand. Yeah. I understand. Okay. First of all, Okay. No, that's got nothing to do with attachment. Attachment, as we discussed, as you know, is a state of mind that interprets things as more delicious than they are, as things we need to have, things we think about when they're not there, and hanker after them, when, you know, and then want them, and then sad when they break, and that kind of thing. It's just, look at us, join the club. It's just how we are. So giving up attachment. Okay, when it's very strong objects, such as, say, alcohol, it's obvious, because it has such a pull on us, that it really is best to give up the object. Can you see? Some objects are so, even some relationships, some people, we have so much attachment that it's just like a nightmare. The relationship's a nightmare. Because you just can't build up the attachment with the person because it brings up too much jealousy, too much anger. If enough people left the relationship before they killed themselves, the world would be a much fuller place. Do you understand? So clearly, if the object is strong, you need to remove yourself from the object. It's obvious, and that's it's common sense. If we could really see, if we could have the kind of self-respect that could recognise the people, the events, the things, the objects that pull us too strongly, that make us crazy. Do you understand my point? Then we would remove ourselves from them. That's a really intelligent way to practice. That's like junior school level of abiding by the laws of karma. You protect yourself. You with me? It's really clear. So, the real point, and the reason to remove yourself from the object is because you can then have space to work on the actual problem, which is the attachment. So we all know that if you give up alcohol, you don't really give up attachment, you just dump it onto food and something else instead. We've got to really change the mind. And that's extremely hard, sophisticated work. So given that, we then have to have common sense and look into our houses and look into our relations and really look at, because it's easy to get things in this world. We mightn't all be hoarders like they show on the telly, but we really do hoard, So that's, and the thing is, don't get too caught up in that. Just because you have very few things doesn't mean you're not attached. You just might be a bit obsessed with having space, but you're still attached. So the point is, if you want to have a house and have it full of things, then this is the point about impermanence. When you think about impermanence, this should just stop you in your tracks. Then you can have $100 million and not care because you realise it's impermanent. So don't worry about attachment, not attachment. Give it away, don't give it away, sell it, don't give it. It's too complicated. Just remember impermanence, sweetheart. That's the first teaching. Things change. You're going to die. You have to leave. Things change. And when we realise impermanence, it's very sobering because then you cling less. So meanwhile, you enjoy your cups and this and that. But it's just really understanding impermanence that it puts it in perspective. Then there's space to think about attachment after that. Are you with me? And what's there time, darling? Yes, exactly. That's the one, you see all the houses, you see the junkie. And much of the time it's not conscious. You don't really use it, you don't, but it's a fear of not having it. People... What, sweetheart? Yeah, but you've got to think about all that. It's nice to have sentimental things if you have a house. What does it mean? Analyse it. Not trying to be cruel or anything. I know, well then analyse it. So listen to me, if you have a house, please make it a nice house. Because then you have people come, you have to make them comfortable and happy. So have nice things. Have nice things, including sentimental. But remember impermanence. Right there, it'll sober you up. That's what I'm saying. Right there. So some people give up. One of my sisters is fanatic and has no photos, no sentimental things. That's just her style. Another sister, has everything and put all on, everything. Everyone's different. But if you have things and want a nice house, offer to your family, to offer to your friends, it's also an action of generosity. But remember impermanence, you've dropped dead any moment, you'll bring none of it with you. So you've just got to be practical on the earth, And then if you're going to have nice things, this is the Mahayana one, you make it beautiful for others. You make it like an offering to others, But notice your mind. Notice if you're miserly, if you're mean, Because attachment means you don't like to get rid of it. Or you don't want to give it to somebody else, For sure, keep on to family things. Like in my family, they would only, there's an agreement. You don't give mum's things away. If you want to give it away, give it to one of the other family, That's okay. Let people do like that. But, yeah. Yes. Yes, that's right. That's right. Yes. That's right. You understand? That's fine. That's fine. Have to think about these things, that's all. Have to think about these things. So listen, it's 4:30, darling. It's time for a break. I would say half an hour, have a cup of tea, and then come back and we do some meditation. So just to finish, are we clear about the teacher thing? Makes some sense? Did it clarify some of your points, sweetheart? I forget your name again, I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's right, Sam. So it does clarify some points for you? All right. So for you, if you've been to different traditions, like you've been to, it's a Kanji monastery, isn't it? One you went to? Nyingma? Okay, Nyingma, yeah. So then you've been to different traditions, so you just got to see where you fit. In the end, we come into this life really with a very strong lineage. And you're going to recognize your lineage, You're going to have lamas from all the different traditions. I've got Sakya lamas, Kagi lamas, Nyingma lamas, and my heart lamas are Gelugpa. That's been my style from the beginning, I recognize, So you've got to know where you fit. And then slowly, you'll meet your good lamas. You pray every day to the Buddha. Pray every day when you do the practice, like Vajrasattva, you really pray for the Buddha to guide you to meet your lamas, to lead you in that direction, to meet your... And it's because lamas from the past, there's lamas from past connections, When you have connection with, you can guide you. So pray strongly every day. Because one of the key practices for that is to want, is to request, to wish, to want. Please may I meet my lamas, please may I meet my path. Every day, it's an aspiration, and that leads you to it. It's like saying I'll do something. Aspiration is a wish, and as Lama Zopa says, everything exists on the tip of the wish. It's every day pray. Okay, see you in half an hour at 5:05.